Hello again, everyone, and welcome back at long last to SFF180. In this episode, I'm taking a look at the three most recent books, 2 novellas and a novel, by Hailey Piper, the wildly inventive Bram Stoker Award-winning author of Queen of Teeth, whose career in horror has been on a meteoric rise. Something I feel I can say without hyperbole. But, as we will see, Piper is an author who is not interested in repeating herself, though with these 3 books, we can see how she's starting to define some signature tropes and themes that she enjoys exploring, taking a slightly new approach each time. This video is also covering the 3 books I read for the Trans Rights Readathon a couple of weeks back, which was launched by Texas author Kern, who I met at Armadillicon a couple of years back. This raised a 6-figure sum for trans organizations around the country. I will link you to more info about that in the description if you're interested. Hailey Piper launched her writing career in 2018 with a prolific run of short stories and her debut novella, The Possession of Natalie Glasgow. But she really rose to prominence in 2020 with her stunning Lovecraft-infused novella, The Worm and His Kings. Piper's an author who's demonstrated there's no subject matter too gonzo for her to tackle at least once. Her upcoming novel, A Light Most Hateful, has already been optioned for film, so it is safe to say she is going places. In this episode, I'll be reviewing Piper's 3 newest releases, which offer a good look at how she mashes up genres to create stories that are comparable to very little else on the shelves right now. Before I start, please note, my review of Even the Worm Will Turn does include spoilers for The Worm and His Kings. Also, stay tuned until the very end of the video for a giveaway. Your Mind is a Terrible Thing offers a terrific spin on the classic Monsters on My Spaceship premise, though a lot of readers might not initially recognize everything it's doing. It's action-packed, the whole thing is about 90% one massive chase scene, but it's less interested in being traditionally scary than it is in exploring themes and ideas. For a novella about brains with tentacles attacking a spaceship, it's working on a surprising number of levels. On the surface, this is a gloriously gory spectacle that marries elements from the Dead Space video games to an approach to body horror that feels like Tetsuo the Iron Man filtered through Junji Ito. Our hapless hero is Alto, communications specialist aboard the Yellow Jacket, a merchant vessel whose cargo consists of hundreds upon hundreds of human cadavers. Because this is a future in which dead human bodies are routinely recycled into robots called, with appropriate morbid humor, wraiths. This is Hailey Piper's idea of a totally normal future. And it's exactly the level of batshit she can pull off while calmly drinking hot tea and getting a pedicure. One day she might finally decide to get weird, and then we'll all have to worry. As the story opens, Alto has just managed some quality time with their crush, ship's psychologist Esme, when they awaken to find her missing, and the entire vessel overrun with horrific monsters resembling giant brains trailing a mass of tentacle-like extrusions. Now, whatever these beings are, they're capable of hacking not only human minds, but human bodies as well, absorbing victims into their biomass. But by a lucky freak accident, Alto, who has already undergone quite a lot of body modification, ends up with nodes from a Wraith robot embedded into their skull. This not only enhances Alto's own mental faculties, but protects them from the brain's psychic assault as well. It's now a race against time. Alto naturally has to get from one end of the Yellow Jacket to the other, accompanied by the ship's only remaining Wraith. It's entirely okay to enjoy the story strictly on this level, as a kind of video game pastiche, with our hero surviving challenge after challenge, culminating in a climactic boss battle. As a sci-fi popcorn novella, it's short and pacey enough to deliver plenty of entertainment value without overstaying its welcome. But the most fun you'll have with Your Mind is a Terrible Thing comes from peeling back all of the layers of creativity Piper is working with here. For instance, there's the nice cyberpunk touch, where Alto's gender fluidity has been physically realized with a biotech prosthesis that can, shall we say, go either direction depending on Alto's choice of partner. Now, let's be honest, there's quite possibly no more cyberpunk thing a person can do to their body than change their sex. As a person, Alto is an absolute chaos of deep-seated anxiety disorders. And if Piper wanted to be wildly unsubtle with her battling mental illness metaphors, then she couldn't have done it better than to have her poor protagonist attacked by a horde of angry brains. Where most stories like this feature a crew getting picked off one by one in cliché fashion by generic monstrosities, Piper lets this novella be Alto's story about overcoming their personal inner demons. The action has higher stakes, not because the fate of the universe is at risk, although it kinda is, but because of the empathy we feel for this lone fighter who isn't ready for any of this, but has to overcome and rise to the occasion anyway. Finally, there are two popular SF tropes Piper has fun playing with, that of human-to-alien communication, and the distinctly Lovecraftian fixation on insanity. Now, I won't spoil exactly how she adapts and explores those ideas to suit her storytelling purposes, because this tale really comes alive when you experience that for yourself. But Piper never takes the conventional approach at any point, right down to the little grace notes like Alto's harmonica. When you go into a story expecting nothing more than undemanding entertainment and a bloody good time, only to find out you ended up with one that had all of that and brains? Now that is a wonderful thing. Hailey's second novel is about as far as she can get from her first. Queen of Teeth was a satirical sci-fi body horror extravaganza that single-handedly invented a new subgenre, which I have named Vagina Kaiju, because if I don't, no one else will. Just about the only thing it has in common with No Gods for Drowning is a fascination with the spectacle of destroying cities. Beyond that, this new novel is an often relentless mashup of grimdark fantasy, Lovecraftian horror, and detective noir, set in a bleak secondary world whose human inhabitants, for reason no one knows, have been abandoned by the gods who protected them from predatory telepathic sea creatures called glories. Probably the only other book I could think to compare it to might be Ian Esselmont's Night of Knives, also set in a storm-racked coastal town. And probably the only Malazan novel you could call accessible to any reader outside that series' diehards. No Gods for Drowning is Malazanish in a couple of ways. It has characters so morally gray they should be assigned their own Pantone color code, as well as a complicated lore all about humans and gods having what you could fairly call toxic relationships. No, even I would not have expected Piper to go this direction quite this hard. The continent of Egg and its city-states were once under the protection of a host of gods, but 10 years before our story opens, they all left without a word, and ever since, rising seas and attacks by the glories have been ongoing. One of the few remaining city-states is Valentine, where we're introduced to Captain Arcadia Myrn, leading a team helping to evacuate citizens to higher ground in advance of the next expected round of tidal flooding. If you stretch your imagination not very far, all of this can be taken as a metaphor for climate change. Arcadia's former fellow officer is Alex Stathos, who now works as a private detective for Ace Investigations, with his partner Cecil Gillian. Alex and Cecil are investigating a series of ritualistic homicides that have all the earmarks of sacrificial killings. Neither Arcadia nor Alex suspect that the murderer, and we know this from page 1, so don't worry about any possible spoilers, is none other than Arcadia's lover, Lilac Antonis. Lilac is not merely a priestess, but the earthly daughter of the goddess Logoi, and these human sacrifices are Lilac's attempt to summon her divine mother to return and save the city and its people. Now, such sacrifices are legal in this society if the victims consent, but we know Lilac's victims were lured. Lilac has deeply bitter and personal motives as well, as her own twin little girls were lured to their watery deaths by the glories. Arcadia is also pledged to Logoi in a ritual years before that physically changed her sex. She is haunted by the memory of a mass slaughter in a nearby village named Shaw, carried out not long after the gods departed, as a sacrifice to Logoi, in which Arcadia could not bring herself to participate despite orders. Alex did participate, but he has grown to hold an undying resentment towards the gods for what they demand of their human subjects, let alone their abandonment. What follows is a plot packed so full of secrets and lies, double crosses and betrayals, guilt and redemption, that to attempt to summarize it would have the bizarre effect of spoiling too much while explaining too little. It's much more practical to talk about the story's effect, which is often overwhelming. Though it's all incredibly layered and dense, Piper manages to create a physically tactile world without heaps of exposition or lore dumping, except perhaps in those scenes which owe the most to the tropes of detective noir, where villains deliver impassioned speeches explaining their motives. And when I say physically tactile, I'm not exaggerating. The midsection of the novel consists of an extended storm sequence that is unlike nearly anything I've read in modern fantasy. What follows that is, if possible, even more intense, as gods and demigods and human characters find themselves in an inextricable conflict with apocalyptic stakes. If there's anything to critique here, it may be that some readers are going to find No Gods for Drowning just too much of everything, too busy and complex, too visceral, too frenetic, too full of anguish, what Roger Ebert used to call too much of a muchness. But it's also a story that draws upon a deep well of pain, the need we all have to feel loved and protected and watched over, to extract hope and promise and the chance of a better future. It's a book that pulls its readers in deep over their heads, not for drowning, but immersion. Finally, Even the Worm Will Turn is the sequel to a book that felt like it could not possibly have a sequel, but I suppose it takes a writer like Hailey Piper to end a story with the apparent destruction of all time and space and then say the hell with it and write a sequel anyway. Opening in 1994, 4 years after the events in The Worm and His Kings, this story reintroduces us to Donna Ashton, the sole survivor of the encounter with the worm in the cavernous realm deep beneath the streets of Manhattan. Donna, or Dee, was once a lawyer before Reagan-era prejudices got her sacked from her firm for being gay, but now she's picking up the pieces of her life. She's clerking at a small firm and has an on-again, off-again girlfriend. But when Donna finds herself abducted by a shadowy organization called Engine, run by Azara McCann, a hard-tempered woman who wears red suits and claims to be the daughter of one of the cultists who abducted Donna 4 years ago, Donna is forced to relive the ordeal all over again. Most traumatically, she's confronted by unresolved grief over the loss of her girlfriend Monique Lane, who ventured underground to rescue her, only to disappear into dark time in the battle with the worm. Now, like most middle books and trilogies, Even the Worm Will Turn cannot fully replicate the mind-bending experience readers got from The Worm and His Kings, but its story is powerful in its own way. Now, as I mentioned in my review of the first book, Piper is very good at defining what I call the threshold moment. This is the scene in any horror tale where the character steps over that line, either literal or metaphorical, where they leave the relative safety of everyday life and venture into realms of terror and the unknown. It may be as simple as walking down a flight of stairs or taking a wrong turn. One moment in this book that stands out to me because it is so wonderfully mundane is the way Piper has Dee buy a blueberry muffin as her last totally normal act before venturing into the underground. I've always loved the idea of daily life just going on all around us, while just around a nearby corner, or maybe one floor down a lonely stairwell, unfathomable horrors lie in wait. But this story has a much more striking threshold moment, and it is one that I will not spoil, though sadly I am absolutely certain every other review of this book you're going to see will. Let's just say that at a crucial moment in the story, something happens to Donna that brilliantly dramatizes the theme of choices and consequences, inflection points in our lives that divide everything we've experienced into before this and after this. Donna comes to realize that her only ally in her new battle is literally herself, as she begins to grasp what actually came out of the encounter between Monique and the worm, and what it means for the fate of the human race. On a less glowing note, if there's one element in the story that failed to fully satisfy, it was Engine. Now, unlike the cultists in the first book, whom we spent enough time with that we understood their deluded motives, Engine feels much too underdeveloped. Azara could easily have had much more character development given her personal connection to past events, but she just feels like a cliché villain, as does her hulking henchman, Mr. Tower. And Engine itself, which we're told is a government entity of some kind with no elaboration, comes across as another one of those hackneyed horror enterprises where hapless amoral scientists fool around unwisely with cosmic powers beyond their ken to their inevitable doom. But in the end, Piper does leave us with a sense of hope, and the knowledge that Donna has come to understand herself as a person in ways she never had before, ways that will help her heal and move forward. Now, exactly how all of this is going to climax in the final installment is impossible to guess, and that's exactly what any trilogy needs to keep all us proverbial worms on the hook. And there you have it. That's all I've got time for this episode of SFF180. Remember, the most important thing, these are reviews. You are not always going to agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe if you have not done so. That is how the channel grows. And now it is time for the giveaway. I happen to have in my hot little hands an extra copy, there it is, Thomas, right side up, of No Gods for Drowning. So if you would like to win this, first off, you have to be one of my US viewers. I'm so sorry that I cannot open this up to overseas viewers, outside the United States, what have you. Postage costs and all of that are just insanely prohibitive for that. So I apologize. I wish all of you could participate, but sadly, US viewers only. All you've got to do to enter to win this is send an email to that address right there with the accompanying subject line. That's all you've got to do is send the email. If you use a made-up handle, then, just please include your actual name in the body of the email. If you are the winner, I will then contact you to request your mailing address. So there you go. Chance to win No Gods for Drowning. Good luck to you. I will announce the winner not this coming Monday on the mailbag, because I think mailbag is going to be pushed back one more week. But I will announce it then on the mailbag at the very beginning. So register or not register, just email. Do whatever. You know how it goes to win this. And otherwise, you can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks like early access to some of my videos, if I finish them on time. But mostly, the Patreon is so that I can pay Matt Olson, the amazingly wonderful, gifted, talented channel artist who does all of my great thumbnails and things like that for me. So thank all of you for that additional support. It is greatly appreciated. I want to thank all the rest of you for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and the most patient viewers in all of BookTube. And until I see all of you next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay away from brain tentacles, and happy reading.